Hey, this is the C&D channel. I'm Chris, and this is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my predictions for UFC 139, which is going to happen on November 19th. As far as this card goes, it's a really fun card. Besides like Bulls versus Faber, there aren't too many fights that really matter to title contention. Maybe if Dan Henderson beats Shogun, or Shogun beats Henderson, and Machida beats Jones in the next UFC. But otherwise, it's more of just like a really fun card, a lot of stand-up battles and whatnot, or just like fast-paced fights. So, let's get right to it. Okay. On the main event, we have Dan Henderson versus Mauricio Shogun Hua. Mauricio, he's coming back from beating Forrest Griffin in the rematch within the first round. So it was a really good win from him. He has really strong leg kicks and just a lot of power in his strikes. Dan Henderson, though, has been on a roll, especially with his right hand as of late. He knocked out Faber Emelianenko. Then he beat Fei Zhao with the right hand, and Babalu. So he's been doing really well. I believe this fight is a 5-round fight, so I got to see how that affects how these guys perform. Both these guys have gone 5 rounds, though. Shogun has gone 5 rounds with Machida. Dan Henderson went 5 rounds with Rampage, Jake Shields. So they're no strangers to 5-round fights. It's not tough for me to call. If Dan Henderson was utilizing his wrestling a little more, I'd probably lean a little more towards him. But I'm going a little more towards Shogun. I feel that he has more variety in his strikes, especially if he gets those leg kicks going on. I know there's always the danger of the right hand, but Shogun also presents his own dangers, as well. This guy, first guy to knock out Machida, just knocked out Forrest Griffin, so it's not like he has pillow hands or anything like that. I just feel he has more variety in strikes, his ground game's really good as well if he decides to take it there. He didn't look great against Jones, but it's hard to look good against John Jones these days, and that's one of the only times I've really seen him lose to strikes, but that was really accumulation. Shogun does have a really good chin as well. So does Dan Henderson. However, with Henderson, he did get dropped by Fei Zhao and Fedor. So it's not, it's not super bulletproof, as it used to be. It's still very strong. It's still granite. But it's not like he hasn't been dropped or anything like that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Shogun to win this one. I think it'll be a pretty close fight. Okay, next fight after that we have Cung making his UFC debut against the ex-murderer Wanderlei Silva. This one's kind of tough for me to call because the way I see it is it's a puncher versus a kicker in a sense. It's Wanderlei's going to throw those wild haymakers. He'll probably throw a couple leg kicks in there. He hasn't thrown those knees that he was well known for back in Pride and the early days in the UFC. And that's really unfortunate too. That was a very deadly weapon, and he just hasn't thrown as of late. Cung, one thing about Cung is the guy lost to Scott Smith. Obviously, he avenged the loss, but still, it's wild brawler that he lost to. Really come from behind victory there, though. It's really hard for me to say because Cung could just fight with distance using his kicks and his range. The side kicks, the spinning back kick is really lethal. He throws hook kicks, and he definitely does a body assault. So this one's actually kind of hard for me to say because, if you watch Wanderlei against like Rich Franklin, for example, he finds a way to get in eventually. And that's the thing. I kind of think that Wanderlei's gonna find his way in. I don't think Cung Le's gonna knock him out or TKO him, to be honest. Guys that have knocked out Wanderlei like Lieben, Rampage, and whatnot, are really heavy hitters. I just can't see Cung Le doing that. And this one's really hard for me to call. When I first saw this fight, I was kind of leaning towards Wanderlei. As we're getting closer to fight week, I'm leaning more towards Cung Le. Really tough for me to call, though. I can't really. It's hard to give a definitive prediction here, but I'm gonna go with Cung Le here, leaning more towards him. I think he'll be able to utilize more of a kicking game here. I don't know if we'll see these guys as ground games. From what little I've seen, it's underrated. That's what I keep hearing, anyways. I think it'll probably be a stand-up battle. I think Cung Le is going to take this one. Okay, next fight after that, Urijah Faber is going to fight Brian Bowles. This is a really good fight. I really like this fight. I think Urijah Faber is going to push the pace here and utilize his wrestling to get the victory. I'm going with Urijah Faber in this one. However, Brian Bowles is really solid. I mean, this guy... One thing I really like about Brian Bowles, besides that he's just really technically sound, is his ability to mix in all aspects of MMA. If you watch like the Damacio Page fight, he's really patient too. He was striking with him, then he wrestled, then he found that guillotine, done. It was just striking to wrestling to jiu-jitsu. Saw a little bit of that in the Mizugaki fight as well. So that's the thing with Bowles. He's very technically sound, and he mixes in all aspects of MMA really well. One thing is, even though I said, that Faber could wrestle his way to victory, I mean, Bowles is a really good wrestler himself. So, he could potentially stuff some Faber takedowns. That's why I'm not super confident in this fight, just because I find Bowles to be a very well-rounded fighter. And technically sound fighter as well. I just think Faber's pace, I think that he'll be able to get the fight to the ground eventually. In the stand-up, Faber's striking isn't too bad, but I do feel that he has a tendency to get outstruck. He's not the best defensively, that's the thing. And, he has I'm starting to, he has that overhand right, the right hand. He throws that push kick. It's a bit wild. I don't think Faber's definitely not as technically sound as Brian Bowles. But like I said, the pace that Faber will push, I think he'll probably be able to get a takedown in there. And that's why I'm going to go with Urijah Faber to win this one. Okay, next fight after that, we have Martin the Hitman Kampmann versus Rick the Horror Story. This one's actually really close too. I think that Kampmann beat Jake Shields. I think that Kampmann beat Diego Sanchez. I don't think he should be on a losing streak at this time. One thing about Martin Kampmann that I'm not a fan of is that he almost always fights to his opponent's strengths. He tried to choke out Jake Shields. Then, by doing that, he got Jake Shields managed to get on top of him. I think he took his back because Kampmann was trying to choke him out. Against Paul Daly, instead of trying to take him down, he was striking with him. Even with Diego Sanchez, in the sense of going for, fighting like those wild brawls, he stuffed a lot of Diego Sanchez's takedowns though. He even stuffed a couple of Jake Shields' takedowns. So, Kampmann's a really well-rounded fighter. He looked his very best against Paulo Thiago, utilizing a jab, taking him down, even out jiu-jitsuing him. The thing is over at Rick Story, I mean, this guy is all about pressure. You see the Johnny Hendricks fight, Thiago Alves fight a little bit, and he has an iron chin. You watch a Thiago Alves fight, he's getting punched in the face in the third round a lot of times, and he just kept pushing forward. I think that Rick Story is just going to keep pushing forward. If he has him against a cage, he's going to throw those body punches, which are kind of arm punches, but still, it's accumulation. And he's going to try and take him down. I think Kampmann might be able to defend Rick Story's takedowns. If Kampmann utilizes a wrestling game here, he can definitely get the upset on Story as well. I don't know if he'll complete the takedowns, but at least he'll give Story some other looks. So I am leaning towards Rick Story to win this one with his pressure game, But once again, like a lot of these fights, it's not like I'm super confident in this pick because I see avenues where the opponent can win as well. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Rick Story to win this one. Okay, and the final fight of the main card, we have Stephan Bonnar versus Kyle Kingsbury. This one's pretty tough for me to call. I was actually leaning towards Bonnar when I originally saw this fight, but now I'm actually going to go with Kingsbury. I think that if Kingsbury utilizes a wrestling game, he'll be able to edge out Bonnar. You saw in like the Maldonado fight, which I thought he lost. Kingsbury did utilize his wrestling. Maldonado just managed to get back to his feet right away. Bonnar does not have that good of takedown defense. I mean, this was a guy that was getting taken down by Mark Coleman. In the stand-up, though, with Bonnar, he's the American Psycho. He gets stronger as the fight progresses. He's actually on like a 2-fight win streak against like Krzysztof Szynski and Igor Prokrayak, which is probably like one of his better win streaks to date. In the stand-up, he's pretty well-rounded. His pace is crazy. The guy is wild. He's not exactly. He's not a one-punch knockout guy. He's definitely an accumulation guy. But Kingsbury, my concern here is that Kingsbury will oblige Bonnar in the stand-up wars. It's something that he's done with like Maldonado, for example, I just think he might have fallen in love with his hands. Kingsbury does hit pretty hard. One thing about Kingsbury though, he does train in AKA, so like I said with the wrestling thing, if he manages train with AKA, utilizing wrestling, I just think he'll be able to win. I'm kind of banking on that though, where it's just like Kingsbury has to utilize his wrestling to win this one. If not, I think Bonnar would edge him out in the stand-up. So I'm gonna go with Kyle Kingsbury to win this one. Okay, now to the Spike prelims, we have Ryan Darth Bader versus Jason Brills. Ryan Bader, despite losing to Tito Ortiz in his last outing, and he lost to Jones before that, I still think he's a good fighter. I think he's a better version and younger version of Jason Brills. Brills is a game fighter. He has solid stand-up with good wrestling. Same with Bader. I think Bader arguably has the more power in his hands. One thing about Ryan Bader, though, the guy tends to gas. Or even if he doesn't gas necessarily, he tends to fade. Where, like, even if it's a Jardine fight where he won in the third round, he'll just strike and nail these takedowns with ease. And then later on, you can tell his shot's a little slower than it was the first round. And by the third round, he can't get any takedowns. That's for example there. Eric Schaefer, the Eric Schaefer fight, same thing. It's great in the first round, okay in the second, gas in the third. You know what I mean? He's a guy that he might not totally gas out, but he definitely fades as the rounds continue. That's my only concern with Bader. Otherwise, I think he's just a better version of Brills, really. Stronger wrestler, heavier hands, equal stand-up, but, Bader, I'd give Bader the advantage. Just a little more power, in my opinion. Brills actually is coming off a quick loss to Matt Yushchenko. It was a TKO loss. We'll see how this fight goes. I got Bader winning it. Okay, next fight after that, we have Michael Mayday McDonald versus Alex Soto. Well, the thing with Soto is he's taking this fight on short notice against arguably the UFC bantamweight's best prospect. Soto has a pretty much a perfect record. 6 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. Trains out of Team Hurricane Awesome in San Diego, alongside Wallel Watson and Liz Carmouche. Not big on that name, Hurricane Awesome. He's only 27, still relatively young. Not as young as Michael McDonald though. This guy's been in some wars. He has some great fights. His fight with I think it was Edwin Figueroa was really fun. He had a really good fight with Chris Carriasso. Just a really hot prospect, pretty well-rounded, really young. I have him beating Alex Soto here. Michael McDonald, he's someone that's going to break into the top 10 in the future. Probably challenge for the title. This guy, he's way too young, already showing a pretty well-rounded skill set, being so young. Okay. And I can actually say that about the next fight, which is going to be on the Facebook prelims, as Chris Weidman fights Tom Lawler. Chris Weidman is arguably the UFC middleweight's number 1 prospect right now. His wrestling game is top-notch. His grappling game is really coming along as well. Tom Filthy Lawler, good fighter. He has solid wrestling and ground game of his own. You saw that against Patrick Cote. His stand-up is not bad. He was outstriking Aaron Simpson. I would argue, and Joe Dirksen until he gassed out and got his back taken. Lawler, he actually said this. It's pretty funny, but it's he's all look, I practice cardio. It's, I think he pushes a really torrid pace in the first round, especially if he has his opponent on the ropes, and that causes him to gas out. I would argue he probably does have a good gas tank. He showed it against Cote. It's just, when he sees that he has his opponent on the ropes, he really goes for it and doesn't really pace himself, which probably hurts his gas tank. I'd argue that Lawler at this point has a better stand-up than Weidman, but I think Weidman's going to be able to get the fight to the ground and maybe get the submission victory. It's really tough to say. Or if he doesn't get the submission victory, at least win in top control. But I got Chris Weidman winning this one. Okay, next fight after that, we have Nick Pace versus Miguel Torres. Nick Pace, he lost his last fight against Ivan Menjivar, but he looked really good, especially in the third round. He got a knee and almost won the fight, actually. And he's still a prospect. He lost to Demetrius. Both these guys lost to Demetrius Johnson. I really think that Miguel Torres beat Demetrius Johnson, and it was a real tragedy to see, in my opinion, and really defines this idea of fighting on the bottom versus top control. I think that Demetrius Johnson really didn't throw much ground and pound. He didn't do really much from top control, and Miguel Torres was constantly attacking from the bottom, both with strikes and submission attempts, and he still lost the fight. And I thought that was really unfortunate, and not what MMA should be about. Staying on. Jiu-jitsu's a part of the game. Fighting from your bottom is a part of MMA. And yes, the guy on the bottom, despite where MMA has gone, the guy on the bottom is still capable of causing more damage than the fighter on top. With that said, I do have Miguel Torres winning this one. I remember on the first and I think the second round, Nick Pace. Was it? Now I forgot where he got that well-placed knee on Menjivar. But he was getting outstruck by Menjivar. And I do feel that Miguel Torres, especially with his length, if he can really utilize that jab, can outstrike Nick Pace. On the ground, Nick Pace is really good. He does have that pace choke, of course, among other things, But Miguel Torres' ground game is really good, very active. His flexibility, especially in that Johnson fight, really showed off there as well. So it's not like Miguel Torres is a slouch on the ground either. So I think Miguel Torres arguably probably has the better ground game than Pace, and I think he can outstrike him. So yeah, I got Miguel Torres winning this one. Okay, next fight after that, we have two Brazilians, as Rafael dos Anjos is going to fight Gleison Tibau. This one's tough for me to call, actually. The thing with Tibau is he's very strong, and his wrestling game is really good. His jiu-jitsu game is really good, but so is dos Anjos. He has a really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu game as well. I think dos Anjos at this point has the better stand-up. He just knocked out George Salteropoulos in his last fight. If you watch the Emerson fight, dos Anjos was throwing some really nasty leg kicks. Even in the Clay Guida fight, dos Anjos was doing really well until he got his jaw broken, of course. He even stuffed a couple of Guida's takedowns. I'm leaning a little more towards dos Anjos because I think he's the more well-rounded fighter. One thing about Tibau is that he's that guy that will reach a certain point in the UFC. He can never break into the top 10, and there's always some opponent that that thwarts him. It's like he'll pick up a couple wins, then he'll fight some guy that could potentially break him into the top 10 or give him some higher profile fights, but he usually doesn't win. He usually just reaches this one point where he just he can't seem to break through. Dos Anjos, I feel he's a prospect in the division. Like I said, he has a pretty well-rounded game. He's really fixed his striking as he's come along in his UFC career. So I got Dos Anjos winning this one. Tibau could wrestle his way to victory and keep top control. But, like I said, dos Anjos is a really strong ground game as well. Yeah, next fight after that, Seth Baczynski is going to fight Matt Brown. I'm a big fan of the Immortal one. He looks really good against John Doomsday Howard. Seth Brzezinski looked really good in his last fight against, I believe it was Clay Harbison. Both these guys are kind of mirror images of each other as well. They're kind of tall. They kind of like to strike. They both like to push forward. I think Matt Brown's probably going to have the better cardio. He's the type of guy that's really he's really the gamer. If he sees that his opponent's getting tired, he'll swarm on him. Matt Brown's weakness is definitely his ground game. He does get submitted a good amount of times. He got submitted by like Brian Foster, Chris Lytle, who else? Ricardo Almeida. So his ground is he does get submitted. I can't see him get submitted here. I think I'll go with Matt Brown. I think these guys are mirror images of each other. I think Brown, though, is a bit more of the gamer or game opponent in the sense that, I don't think he'll get tired very easily. He'll definitely push a pace and maintain that pace within 3 rounds. So I get Matt Brown winning this. And finally, we have Shamar Bailey versus Danny Castillo. This one's actually tough for me to call. Castillo, I believe Castillo trains as alpha male. He looked good against Joe Daddy Stevenson. I think he just lost to Volkman, if I'm not mistaken. And Shamar Bailey actually pretty good against Evan Dunham. Even showed a little bit of his stand-up game there. Kind of mirror images of each other in a sense. I think both these guys are wrestlers. One thing about Shamar Bailey is he's really strong. I mean, this guy used to fight at welterweight and was ripped as a welterweight. And he cuts to lightweight, and now he's ripped as a lightweight. Tough for me to call, really. I do like Danny Castillo, but I'm gonna go with Shamar Bailey. I think he'll be able to out-wrestle Castillo and maintain top control. It's mirror images of each other. It's really tough to say who's gonna win that fight, though. Okay, and that's pretty much it for my predictions for UFC 139. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you very much.